This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I've mentioned recently about how they're farming underground. It's important that people know about this. There's a lot of people that have questions. Why are they farming underground and not above ground? Why would they even continue to farm at this point? I don't understand what's going on. Well, this is how you understand what's going on. He who controls the food controls the people. Okay? Without food and water, we all die. That's common sense. So if you can't plant and grow your own food and you don't have water available to you, if they start doing things like, I don't know, weaponizing the weather so that we don't have lakes and rivers and they all start to dry up, then we're going to become more dependent on them to do things, to give us things like food and water. Thus, they'll have more control over us. Thus, we'll have to comply to all the ridiculous, sick, satanic things that they want us to comply to, like castrating kids. But of course, it all really ties into the mark of the beast because we will not be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast, and we will not be able to grow food or have food or water without it because they're going to make sure that we end up taking the mark and then we end up joining them and abiding by all of their rules and obliging to everything that they ask. So they've begun this brainwashing of the masses with farming underground. They've talked openly about multiple things. Connect the dots here. They've talked about blacking out the sun. Remember I covered this? We've seen the predictive programming on The Simpsons and other places about blocking out the sun. By blocking out the sun, thus we will not be able to grow food. Nobody thinks about that, right? We need the sun to grow food. Now, how would they have a sun underground? Well, they'll use all the technology that they have with using, all sorts of artificial sunlight that they've created, all sorts of sun lamps and et cetera, that they'll be able to use underground. See, here's the thing. People start thinking about this and they go, well, if they can farm underground, we can farm underground. Where are you going to go underground? What, are you going to dig a hole in your backyard? They have underground cities and tunnels that you're not invited to. Okay? They're destroying the Earth's surface while they're building their palaces under the earth where you will not be able to go. You'll be stuck here on the earth, understand? And all the places that will be inhabitable, where you can live, will be under their control. They'll be smart cities. You won't be able to go off-grid. And if you are off-grid, they'll see to it that not only are you rounded up, in the event that they don't find you, which they'll be able to do with all the technology they have, including all the drones they'll be flying overhead, they'll make sure that the resources are not available for you by blocking out the sun. Thus, you won't be able to independently farm. We've heard about what they're doing all around the world, right? With shutting down farmers and blaming it on climate change. And the idiots out there are agreeing with it, not thinking about food or water, of course, thinking about the fake hysteria they've created, where people are worried about what it's going to be like in 500 years, not about what life's going to be like tomorrow, right? And the Bible obviously tells us, Jesus tells us specifically, worry about today. Today's troubles are sufficient for today. Do not worry about tomorrow. Well, they want you to worry about 500 years from now with their made-up climate change, again, which they're destroying the earth so that they could have more control over the people, that they could herd people on the earth's surface while they're underground planting and creating food, okay? Newsflash for anybody out there, another thing you can connect the dots with is the vacuum, how they're vacuuming up carbon, because there's no carbon underneath the earth. They need more carbon to grow, at least, underneath the earth. So they're taking the carbon from the Earth's surface so that we can't plant, also limiting our oxygen so they could depopulate and create lots of problems for people breathing-wise, while bringing it all underground so that they, underground, will be able to breathe and live and grow. Here's what they're pushing now, and the idiots out there think this is a great idea with farming underground. Welcome to the new norm.
My very first crop loan in 1985 for 350 acres of rice and 350 acres of beans was $65,000. Now we're into high six figures.
Dave is one of many conventional U.S. farmers trying to keep up with rising expenses.
We used to think $100,000 was a lot for a piece of equipment. Now it is $450,000, to $600,000 for one combine.
He says a lot of carbon-friendly equipment comes with high-dollar price tags. On top of that, climate change-related events and pandemic-related supply chain and labor shortages have also taken their toll on conventional farming. At the same time, engineers and entrepreneurs are bringing unconventional ideas to the industry, like underground farming in urban areas.
What is underground farming? It's just growing food underground using less energy and inputs in general.
In the next 10 years, people who live in cities could have the option to buy produce grown underneath the building they live in. At least that's the goal of Green Forges, the company piloting the first underground farm, set to begin operations in 2022 near Montreal, Canada. The plan is to start with easier crops like leafy greens and herbs, plus some strawberries and mushrooms. The hole will be about 3 feet in diameter and about 50 feet deep. Each growth cycle will last from 20 to 30 days.
Our mission is to expand the number of calories and nutrients grown underground. We want to be a platform for farmers and producers and real estate developers and everybody else who wants basically to expand and stabilize their production to be able to buy these systems and work with us.
Underground farming uses similar technology to vertical farming, also known as indoor farming, including the rack-style setup, reusable water system, and artificial lighting. Philippe says the cost to drill and install one hole depends on the diameter size. It ranges from $175,000 to $250,000 per 100 feet of depth. Each 100 feet can produce a minimum of 15,000 pounds of food per year. Being underneath the ground is one of its biggest advantages, allowing for more energy to be conserved.
We are going towards stability, predictability, but you're going to know exactly when, and that lettuce is going to be coming out of that hole no matter what. If it rains or if it does whatever, it doesn't matter. Each of these forges can do lots of production with very little surface space used, up to 6 times less than surface vertical farms.
When talking about underground farming, it's important to note how much vertical farming has grown over the last few years and what it could mean for a sustainable farming future.
Think about droughts, access to arable land. These are becoming more and more acute every day. We need new farming paradigms.
Arrow Farms in Newark, New Jersey is one of over 2,000 vertical farms in the U.S. as of 2019. The vertical farming crop market value in the U.S. is projected to reach over $1 billion by 2027, up from the roughly $240 million value it had in 2019, according to a study from the firm Research and Markets.
We're growing all year round. We're talking over 26 harvests a year. So this is fundamentally game-changing. 1 acre of growing here would be equivalent of 390 acres out in the field.
But what does the rise of these sustainable farming practices mean for conventional farmers?
I don't think it will affect what is needed from grain farmers or from cattle producers, because I don't think that will be done vertical or underground.
This is an opportunity to think about the broader agriculture system, how we can work. And it's not just about indoor farming, it's not just about urban farming, but what the impact is for agriculture overall.
To reach Growing Underground's farm, you take an old lift 5 stories down to a network of World War II bomb shelters. Down here, the London Underground is actually above you. Free space for a very high-tech farm. It started 5 years ago and has quickly taken root. Pea shoots, rocket, wasabi mustard, red basil, garlic chives, you name it, they can grow it, and quickly. More and more British supermarkets and restaurants are signing up.
We use a hydroponic system, which is a method of growing where the nutrients carry to the plant through water. It's a recycled system, so we use 70% less water than conventional agriculture methods. We're growing within the city and supplying the city from within the city, so it's about reducing food miles, pollution from transportation, and reducing food waste by giving our customers a much longer shelf life.
Next year, they will double the size of the operation using neighbouring tunnels. There are dozens more across London. The UN says that by 2050, 9 billion people will be living on our planet, and that we will have to produce 70% more food than today to feed them all. Projects like this one will play a vital role in the future of farming. The process starts here, where seeds are sown onto recycled carpet. Depending on the crop, it takes just 5 to 10 days before harvesting and shipping.
This is a micro red mustard. This will be harvested tomorrow, and within the next day, it'll be on the shelves of M&S, Ocado, Whole Foods, and it'll get distributed through food suppliers, going to Michelin-star restaurants.
It's a very fast turnaround.
It is. It's got to be fast. It's a fresh product, so you want it to get to the consumer as fast as possible.
Can you taste any difference between this kind of crop and the stuff that's more conventionally grown?
I challenge anyone to take both, taste them. They can't tell the difference.
Food production like this is never going to compete with the volume of conventional farming, but usable land on the surface is running out. Sustainable and cost-effective new technologies like this will have to play an increasing role. Man-made problems up above, inspiring man-made solutions from below.
So telling us we can't farm on the Earth's surface level because of carbon emissions, but it's perfectly safe and it doesn't harm the environment at all under the ground. What they won't tell you is that they're vacuuming out carbon here and putting it underground. What do you think? They vacuum the carbon and then what? What does it do? Plants absorb the carbon, so the plants and the trees would be perfect to get rid of the problem that they say we have, right? They're sucking it out of the air. Where is it going? It's getting fed underground so that they can grow underground while we can't grow here. What are other stories we hear on the Earth's surface about difficulties farming, right? I mentioned the blacking out of the sun. Well, what are we seeing? Well, fertilizer shortages, problems with fertilizer, conveniently, right? We know that they've taken control of the fertilizer through Monsanto, and we know if you speak to people who farm and grow, it's becoming more and more difficult to produce crops. This is done by design. It's not because of droughts that they've created. It's also because of the soil. So they use droughts and they blame climate change, even though they can create and cloud seed and make rain if they wanted to, which is science, which has been proven, which we've seen all over the earth, recently done in experiments even in Dubai, right? So they should be able to say, well, we wouldn't have droughts, we can grow food. They don't want you to grow food. That's the point. They don't want you to grow food, so they blame the climate, they blame the droughts. They do these things, and it's just designed sabotage. That's what it is. And if you haven't seen my video on vacuuming up carbon, here's a clip from it. The Biden administration is openly saying we're going to vacuum up carbon. Well, if you saw the video I did recently also about how they're talking about, cutting down trees and burying them underground because, trees actually can absorb the carbon problem. They don't want the trees to absorb the carbon problem. They want us to have minimal oxygen here on the Earth's surface while they're breeding and growing and thriving underneath the earth. And you're not invited to this party, but here's a clip of why what they're trying to do with carbon vacuums.
The Biden administration is kickstarting the U.S. carbon removal industry. The Department of Energy announced a $1.2 billion investment to suck carbon dioxide out of the air. The money will fund 2 new direct air capture hubs in Texas and Louisiana. Huge vacuum cleaners will be built to suck up carbon dioxide from the air and store it underground. The Department of Energy says this plan could remove the equivalent of nearly 500,000 gas cars off the road a year.
In Squamish, British Columbia, there's a company that wants to stop climate change by sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
One of our plants does the work of 40 million trees.
We have the lowest capital cost and energy cost of any of the CO2 capture from atmosphere solutions.
We're starting to enter commercial markets.
It's called carbon engineering, and it uses a combination of giant fans and complex chemical processes to remove CO2 from the air in a procedure known as direct air capture.
We have such a huge problem with CO2 already in the atmosphere that if we have a mechanism to collect it at large scale, it will give us so much more flexibility in addressing climate change. And we'll start to address all of those emissions that occurred yesterday, the day before, all the way back into the industrial age.
The company is backed by Bill Gates, as well as the oil giants Chevron, BHP, and Occidental. It's received more funding than any other direct air capture company, and it just announced plans to partner with Occidental to build its first commercial plant. But not everyone is excited.
Partnering with an oil company is absolutely a step in the wrong direction.
You're not stopping the fossil fuel industry, you're actually promoting it.
So we've got a bunch of equipment around us here that collectively process atmospheric air and pull the carbon dioxide out.
Basically, carbon engineering's process involves using large fans to pull in atmospheric air through a device called a contactor. After that, it's just chemistry. The air gets sent through a honeycomb structure upon which a liquid solution of chemicals is constantly raining down on. Some of the CO2 molecules in the air stick to that liquid, and the resulting solution is processed in a few more chemical steps to form calcium carbonate pellets, which are heated at very high temperatures to release pure carbon dioxide, which can then be stored underground or used to create products like fuels. All the chemicals in the process are recycled, so the cycle can repeat. Carbon Engineering's pilot plant is currently powered by a mix of natural gas and clean electricity, and the CO2 generated from combustion is captured. Eventually, though, the company plans to run fully on renewable electricity. While previously, direct air capture was thought to be too expensive to be a viable option, Carbon Engineering published research last June that revealed its process would cost between $94 and $232 per ton of CO2 captured, a steep decrease from the industry's prior estimate of $600 per ton. This led to renewed interest in the tech, especially after the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, released its special report on global warming last October, which stated that some form of carbon dioxide removal would be necessary to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, and thereby avoid the worst effects of climate change.
We were actually assessing a lot of different pathways to reach 1.5 degrees C, but none of them could actually reach the temperature target without removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Each year that we wait, we actually making ourselves more dependent on carbon removal.
Direct air capture is one of only a handful of technologies that can permanently take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
This is like a giant vacuum cleaner for the atmosphere, and it could be one answer to slashing Earth's carbon emissions.
We take it out of the air, so we reverse climate change.
This system is cleaning up some of the 33 billion tons of carbon dioxide that humans will release into the atmosphere by the end of the year. And the International Energy Agency says it's the highest concentration ever. Companies are increasingly facing pressure from consumers and investors to reduce their carbon footprints. So some are turning to the carbon capture industry that's forecasted to be worth approximately $15 billion by 2027. Microsoft and Audi are investing in this technology, while Coca-Cola is purchasing the carbon that's caught.
We believe it's one of the solutions to fight climate change.
But some climate experts doubt the technology can have a meaningful impact on the environment.
Probably one of the biggest challenges here is having captured it, what can you do with it?
We visit one of the largest open-air carbon capture facilities on the planet to see how it absorbs then sells its CO2 and how that could help companies become cleaner. A lot of companies are trying to remove carbon dioxide from the air. Some want to capture it directly by attaching filters on trucks and factories, or by installing ventilation systems in meeting rooms.
Here we basically have air being pumped inside this chamber.
But Climeworks takes carbon dioxide directly out of the atmosphere.
We blow air through this collector using a ventilator. The CO2 sticks inside this box and stays there.
Natalie Casas leads Climeworks' research program. She says this facility is made up of 30 ventilators that can pull in about 1,500 tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere every year.
Inside the collector, we have a filter material. This filter material is able to catch CO2.
Casas says the biggest challenge is making it affordable to set up and use. Building and installing just one of these ventilators here at this facility costs as much as $220,000. And it also needs a lot of electricity. So to clean up the amount of CO2 someone in the US would typically produce in about a month, that's everything from commuting to work to consuming food and watching TV, the company says it would cost around anywhere from $600 to nearly $900.
The target, of course, is to bring costs down, to bring the energy requirements down, and to make it easily scalable.
So Casas has been working on designing larger plants that would use renewable energy sources and require less steel. But one of the most promising ways to offset the cost has been tapping directly into the captured CO2. Climeworks stores the carbon dioxide it collects into these tanks. Then it sells it to this Coca-Cola factory that produces bottled water. Here, recycled carbon dioxide is injected in the water to make it fizzy.
30% of our production is done with the recycled CO2 from Climeworks.
Patrick Wittweiler oversees the carbon dioxide project at Coca-Cola. He says early on, there were challenges, like turning the carbon dioxide into the right kind of liquefied form.
We run a lot of tests and validations just to be sure that the quality remains on the highest level.
Wittweiler says using recycled CO2 is significantly more expensive than the commercial kind, but Coca-Cola is committed to lowering its environmental footprint. Over time, he expects the cost to diminish, and that would allow the company to expand the use of recycled CO2 from bottled water to other drinks like Coke.
We're testing it, and We look into further expansions.
Making drinks fizzy is just one way to use recycled CO2. Carbon capture startups have also been experimenting with creating fuel, toothpaste, and plastic. Climeworks also has another way to profit from the carbon it captures. The startup sells what it calls a carbon removal service, so that individuals or companies like Shopify and Audi can offset their own emissions.
You are flying to Mallorca, but I know it's not so good for the environment. I really want to compensate. You can buy carbon dioxide.
This part of the industry is booming and fast evolving as regulators and climate analysts debate how to best price this type of service.
There are better ways of capturing the carbon dioxide than they're using.
Sandra Kentish is a professor at the University of Melbourne who tracks and compares carbon capture systems around the world. She says it's harder to absorb CO2 from the atmosphere rather than a direct source of pollution.
The CO2 concentration in the atmosphere is only about 0.04%. Cement production, as an example, CO2 concentration's around 30%. So it's hundreds of times easier to capture from something like a cement flue gas than it will be directly from the atmosphere.
This inefficiency means that to capture 1% of the world's emissions in a year, Climeworks would have to build around 800,000 ventilators. But Casa says the company's technology can still make a difference.
Unfortunately, the mess is already here, so we need to take out CO2.
And Climeworks plans to take out more CO2 with a new facility in Iceland that was built with some funding from Microsoft. When it opens in September, the company says the plant will be able to absorb about 4 times more than its Swiss facility. But this time, the carbon dioxide won't be recycled. It'll be injected in the ground and turned into a rock.
These are these white crystals. So this CO2 is actual CO2 which was in the air.
And this kind of evolution is how Climeworks hopes its technology will become cheaper, so that it can clean the air for companies searching for new ways to reduce their own emissions.
So if you're not able to connect the dots, well, I don't know what to tell you. You have a government that's telling you they want to block the sun. You have a government that's telling its farmers not to farm and that they'll be arrested for farming all around the earth here, all around the world. They're telling farmers this. We've seen all the stuff going on, right? I've covered it for years, specifically during 2023, where they're telling, because of the carbon footprint, farmers can't farm. Food! We're telling them not to grow food. You know, you'll die without food and water, right? Don't worry about it. Don't grow food. How dare you? While they're telling you that it's bad for the environment to grow and farm on the Earth's surface, but it's fine underground. It's perfectly safe underground. It's about controlling the resource. They will be the only ones who are able to make food. And you will either die of starvation or you will comply to what they tell you to comply to, which would include taking the mark of the beast, which would really only be about taking the mark of the beast. Die of starvation or take the mark and we'll feed you. And many will give in. They won't realize that this has happened until it's already done. They'll say, wait a minute, why aren't we farming in the air? Well, we sucked all the carbon out of the air. Oh, okay. So all the trees and plants, they all burned in the fires. Wink, wink. I mean, we burned them and we chopped them down openly telling you we're going to chop them down. Okay, right. So now we can't grow plants. And in addition to that, you can't breathe. So more and more people are dying from a lack of oxygen, right? The population is getting dwindled down. But underground, it's perfectly fine for us to grow. It has no carbon problem. But here's the thing. You can't come down here. So what we'll do is we'll send the food up through, our technology. We'll have these big, these big things that just go through the ground, almost like, you see it on factory floors. And then they'll bring up some food for you to eat. And it'll come back down and we'll reload it. And everybody can get in line like, a prison line, waiting for food to get slopped on their plate. Okay? So nobody will be able to grow food except for them. Control the food, control the water, control the people. And they're pushing this all over the place as the newest norm. It's for us to get ready for. That it's better for the environment growing underground. They don't need to give you reasoning behind it. So apparently farming underground doesn't affect the climate. Only farming on the Earth's surface, right? The absolute upside down absurdity of it all, that we're farming underground without real sunlight because the sun is bad too, remember? The sun is bad. Everything is bad on the Earth's surface, but everything's great underground. So we're giving all the resources up here, putting them all underneath the Earth where they're telling us that it doesn't have an effect on health or anything else, so that they can have all of it And we're up here dying of, respiratory issues, not being able to find water because they're draining all the lakes and the reservoirs, etc. And of course, not being able to farm on top of it, block the sun, suck out the carbon from the air. Nobody's connecting the dots at this point because everybody's just completely stupid. So then they tell us that underground agriculture is the future, farming of the future. It's insanity is what it is. It's insanity. What's even more insane is that this is out in the open and nobody is even thinking that this is some type of sadistic plan. They're like, oh, cool, it's going to help the Earth's environment. And they don't even think about photosynthesis. They don't think about oxygen. They don't think about food sources. And this is a spoiled, narcissistic society, right? Everybody can eat whenever they want. People get over-consumed. I mentioned this before. But I feel like Hansel and Gretel, which we've seen, they've even made the horror movie. It's about witches, right? Or the overfeeding of the children and stuff. It's America, right? You get supersized, you get food at the snap of your fingers. Now people are finding it a little bit more difficult because even fast food the prices are through the roof. But it's something we take for granted. They've done that by design. Everyone takes food for granted. When they aren't going to have food in quite some time in the near future, very close time, I should say, then suddenly people are going to be going nuts because we don't have food anymore. But they don't think about it. They're not like, oh, who cares? Their mindset is like, who cares about farmers farming? It's not a big deal. They're like, I don't go to the farm. I go to McDonald's. They don't even realize where food comes from for the most part. They think the food is grown at McDonald's, even though that's not real food. I mean, I'll use a better example. I think they think like the grocery store or wherever they might go pick up food from. Uber Eats. I think they think it grows at Uber Eats and DoorDash. They're like, they grow it themselves, I guess. I don't know. It's just food. It magically appears. I don't need to think about how it's grown. Who cares? I got to play on my phone. I got to watch this on my phone. I got to watch Mr. Beast bathe in Cheetos. I got to go. All right? They're going to stop us from growing food, okay? They're going to be growing it underground. They're going to give you small rations of food. So whatever you think, if you're like, I'm going to take the mark, I don't care. Oh, yeah? You ready for rations? You ready for a little bite a day? You ready for eating, bugs on top of that? Because that's what you'll be eating on the Earth's surface. If you aren't in on this, you'll be eating bugs. They're getting you prepared for that too, right? Even the World Economic Forum is out there talking about this. Of course they are, because it's their agenda. They're the world government, these people, right? Not specifically, with that title, but we know NATO is really, the UN and NATO is who we should be looking at, but they see all the attention is going to the World Economic Forum, and it should be, but who do you think they're working hand in hand with, right? All of our governments. So they even have the World Economic Forum talking about World War II bunkers growing sustainable salads underground. Here's how they do it. This is great for the environment. This is the future. And these idiots are like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea because they've been indoctrinated with bullcrap that they actually think is really happening. I'm not saying that there aren't problems with the climate. There are because they're creating it. But the degree that they're saying that some of this stuff is happening is made up. Ice cap, things melting. Oh my gosh, the ocean's 2 degrees warmer. It means we're all going to die. We're all dead soon. We better do something about it. Yeah, let's all starve ourselves to death. Let's all not eat food anymore. Let's not eat meat anymore. Let's let them do it underground because it's going to be smaller carbon emissions and then let them control the food and how much they can give us and when they can give it to us. The same government who calls us terrorists, the same government who, like China, a communist government, if you don't go along with everything they say, including letting them castrate kids out in the open, or eventually, obviously, when this is all going down, which is soon, if you're against a 40-year-old man dating a 5-year-old kid, well, you ain't getting food. So they're going to force you into compliance by controlling the food and the water resources. So they're farming underground. This is the newest norm that they're getting used to. No one's thinking like, hey, I'm sure a lot of these idiots are like, oh, wow, that would be a cool business to get into. Maybe I'll farm underground. Oh, yeah, how are you getting underground? Are you digging a hole in your mom's backyard? What are you going to do? Dig a hole in the backyard and then what? You're going to insulate? You got hundreds of thousands, no, really millions of dollars to do this? No, you don't. So let's start thinking about who are the people who are going to be able to do this. Oh, the people who already have underground towns, cities, etc. All right? You're not invited to work there. You're not invited to grow there. You will be screwed. We'll all be screwed. And it'll all be because of people who hear ideas like this and think that they're good ideas. They're not. They're called enslavement ideas. And that's what they're doing to humanity. So, underground farming, folks, welcome to hell on Earth. The zombies, of course, will say it's a great idea. They'll take the mark. They'll be okay with 40-year-olds dating 2-year-olds because they're just completely warped, sick, narcissistic, and all they care about is when they're going to get their next fix of technology instead of actually caring about basic human survival, tactics, skills, and things that we need as, more so than anything, which would be resources. We'll have none, okay? They'll have all of them. That's what's happening here. I thank everyone for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you, as always, and your families.